The day that my father we had the funeral for my father, because we didn't bury him, we burnt him, which is what he wanted. Some guy, and this is before I was doing the Guardian thing, it was after I had done Sky, sent to my Twitter account this abusive women having sex with other women, not lesbian, women having sex with other women, porn that was violent, saying this is what your father thought of you. On the day that we were farewelling my best friend, the love of my life, my dad, I was just like, surely they cannot hurt me anymore. But they do, every day, every day. People think that trolling, like, you should be able to just block it out, and people slag off politicians all the time. And it's like, I know that because obviously, you know, I have friends who are politicians and whatever, like, and I know that. I've seen it, I've done it, and words I've used to describe Tony Abbott quite colourful. But I wasn't in a conversation with Tony Abbott or pretending to a level of intimacy. And the other thing too is that I'm a private citizen who does a job. I'm not holding office. I cannot direct the resources of life and death towards people. Like, in terms of democratic accountability, I'm accountable to the rigours of my publication to ensure that what I publish is true and the assertions I make are made on a factual basis. That is the sacred mission of The Guardian. And that is my democratic responsibility. Yet the harassment of me as an individual, I actually haven't seen anything like that directed to politicians. And it's personalised. Like, I have an article come out and all kinds of people will get in contact with me immediately and know that I am listening because I'm online. And that can be really, like, there's a level of intimacy in that contact just by you being available to it that tears down boundaries that used to be quite protective. And, I mean, I've had this conversation with older, particularly male journalists who are just like, there is literally no way we could understand what the hell is going on because this never happened to us. And even male journalists now, this is not what happens to them. But older male journalists who are just like, occasionally you'd get a grumpy letter, like, but nothing like abusive, violent porn sent to me about my dad on the day that we buried him. Sorry, that's... Where it gets frightening is where it does begin to spill over into real life. And I had come home to my flat and there was a packet of material there that with hand-addressed envelope, and I had thought it was like a wedding invitation or something. Who else sends like hand-addressed envelopes? And it was a packet of material depicting gang rapes and genital mutilations, and it had been delivered to my house. And I've had to develop really strict rules about the way that I engage. Nobody knows where I live anymore because somebody followed me home. I don't take photographs of the environment that I live in anymore because somebody found where I lived and observed me over the internet and live tweeted what I was doing in my apartment. And I've had to learn to be careful if I'm going to be on my own, not to like take photographs of where I am at that given point. Recently, I had done an activist gig in the morning, taking a lot of photos, whatever, and then was walking to the Guardian office in Melbourne and somebody punched me in the street. I went to the police and the police were like, well, it could be one of these guys, because I see the police all the time. It could be one of these guys who might have worked out where you were because you were taking photos at the gig, or they might just have gotten lucky and recognised you in the street and decided it was an act of opportunistic violence. And of course it's done because they want you out of the conversation. I mean, one of the reasons why the right have been so active on Twitter is because they're trying to poison it, because too many left-wing people were meeting, you know, people saying positive things about unions and, you know, feminist groups were organising and campaigns of mobilisation, and they realised, you know, look, it's not, like, this isn't a conspiracy theory, this is just standard political strategy. Like, if your opponents are organising and you can disrupt their organising model, you do it. And I think that was the issue I had for a long time, was just going, maybe they do have a point. Maybe I am a barely rape-worthy whore who deserves to be cunt-slashed and die, you know? I never actually thought that, but it was like, God, you know, like, maybe, you know, I'm going to really consider, like, my position on blah, 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 blah. And then you just get to a point, like, I was thinking about this the other day and I felt cauterised. Like, the interesting thing that's happened to me with this whole trolling experience, it's been so bad for so long. that it doesn't hurt anymore. And in some ways that's bad. Like in some ways it's really bad where you sit down and go, oh, well, someone's threatened to rape me again, or someone's called me, oh, they're editing my Wikipedia page again. Oh, they've compared me to a pig again, you know. And just on a metaphoric level, it was like I've lost all my skin and it's just scar tissue now and it doesn't feel anything. And sometimes I really worry about that. The physical stuff, you know, I have to be vigilant all the time, and then sometimes I worry that there'll be a threat that I'll just discount and it'll be a real one and they'll get me. And then there are other times where I just think, fucking bring it on. Bring it the fuck on. Like, I am still here. I'm not going to quit my job. I'm not going to get off the internet. I'm not going to have a nervous breakdown. I'm not going to cry about it. Like, do your fucking worst. And that's, like, is that good for democracy? I don't know. Like, is it? I mean, I have to be confident that I have a larger, like, enough of a diversity of political voices that I listen to, and that I have found voices from the right and from conservative positions who I like those people on a fundamental human level, and I will listen to them and engage with them and respect with them, even though their ideological positions are different to my own. That becomes really important. I mean, that's part of a democratic process, is listening to other people. And I worry that other people wouldn't maintain those relationships. And I worry that other people would just be silenced. I mean, there are heaps of people who won't go on Twitter anymore because they're like, it's too brutal. I've got better things to do with my life. And I'm like, yeah, but your voice is really important here. It's really important here. But at the same time, like, it's brought a harshness to me that didn't used to be there. But it has to be now. The cost of not speaking up is Donald Trump. Like, the cost of not speaking up is the boot in the face. Like, what do people think will happen to feminism if feminists aren't willing to go out and fight for it? And fundamentally, I would rather cop an ocean of shit than put up with 1 minute of it. The moment you go silent, you're actually legitimising your opponents and saying that their tactics work, that their tactics are, you know, effective, and the message that they're communicating, that whoever's the loudest or most threatening deserves more power, you are actually agreeing to that message. And that sounds really harsh, and it's like, how do you think this works? Like, I'm one of those people who is, I'd rather die on my feet than live on my knees. And if enough people have that attitude, it means no one has to die on their feet or live on their knees. And fundamentally, that's what people have got to understand. And like I said, you know, like, it's been a really challenging process, but you do reach a point of cauterisation. And you must remember that the only influence other people have is the influence they have over you. And one of the reasons we've seen the rise of the feminist columnist in the mass media in the West is because actually we speak to the collective experience of a majority of people. Like, the reason why feminist messages against sexism have a huge audience is because the experience of sexism is shared by literally every woman in Western society, to different degrees and with different levels of complication and with different intersections of privilege and disadvantage. But at the same time, like, if we believe that outcomes should be equal, if we believe that society has to be restructured in order to deliver equality, if we believe that we as human beings are born equal and have a right to equal opportunity throughout the course of our lives, why on earth would you recruit yourself to do the work of people who believe in a concentrated supremacy around gender, around race, around sexuality, or anything else?